So I'd like to invite Nikos Michas, who's the Global Tanker Segment Director at Lloyds Register, to make his presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We thank Maritime Standard for the opportunity given us to be here today with you. So we want to talk a little bit about how the tanker market is going and the road to decarbonization. Okay, we all know that we face some difficult years for tankers. We have 2 years of COVID where the market really suffered. And after this, we have geopolitical factors that affect especially tanker market. And after 2-3 years of difficult for tankers, now we see that the market is going up, and generally the future looks more positive. Other things that also affect is the uncertainty we have now with LNG market that make areas like Europe to import more fuel, and the need to reduce CO2 that goes us to new energy mix. So we have new fuels that are going in the market that will affect also the tanker trade. Something that we faced the last months is after the war in Ukraine, we have longer tanker voyages. We see the difference that goes because now more fuel go to Europe from Africa, US, and Middle East compared before was from Russia. So this gives a pattern of maybe 4% more longer trade. So this needs affect the tanker trade. We need more tankers as we need more time for the current trades. And of course, we have EXI and CII that we will see from next year. We need to reduce the speed. So if we see here, we see how was the market. The previous year was going down a lot. We lost almost 8%. This year, the demand is going up. We have not reached yet 2019 values, but we are very close to it. The forecast that you have in Lloyds, that of course we take from other sources, we see that at least 1.5% per year for the following years, something that will continue or at least until 2006 and 2007. The freight rates, you're feeling it. It's from very low, it's reached very good values, especially we see from Aframax tankers at the beginning of the year, and VLCCs are in very good values today. And this is something that is stable and will continue for the following months and next year. The same with earnings. I believe the people going shipping companies are very happy this time, and the projection is positive for the following years as we predict. So the last 2 years we have very big sales and purpose activities. Last year and this year almost 10% of the fleet changed hands. So this especially in tankers. And this is, looks the need for new tankers, as we also don't have a lot of new vessels on the water. Similarly, with the increasement of activities, sales and purposes, the prices also are going up, maybe from the beginning of the year around 35% higher, but it's still in the market a lot of need, so we see a lot of activity. So how is the new building? We know that it's extremely low for tankers. The last years, the most of orders were LNGs and container vessels. So it's historically low. It's almost 4% of the current fleet. You can imagine that the previous decade, every year we order 25 million GT, and this year was only 4. So it's extremely low, and we know also that there are not a lot of slots. So this is another issue. I think there are two problems. One is a very high price that make a lot of you not to go to order. And then it is also there are not available slots because are covered from LNGs. We can see also in this figure how low is the tanker fleet order book. And we see that the fleet is aging, so there is need for replacing. But this delete. Sorry, this too. So I don't want to spend too much time for market because also other speakers are talking. Talk a little bit also for the alternative fuels. So a big percentage of the new orders are now with alternative fuels, especially with LNGs. 22% of the order book of tankers today is with alternative fuels. Okay, for existing fleet is very low, it's 1%. But if we see this year, this amount is exceeding the 40%. And actually, most of them are LNG. And we can see here the number of vessels that are today LNG capable. And we separate LNG capable from ready because the LNG capable are really ready to burn, but the alternative fuel ready vessels, usually there is still a lot of job to be done and a big investment, so they can start burning an alternative fuel. So we see the trend, how is accelerating from year to year the uptake of alternative fuels in the ordering. So why we are going there? This is figures that you have seen, I think, many times the last years, but now we reach the moment where we'll talk about the EXI and CII. And why we need to change our fleet, why we need to invest to new technologies. Because we see that from this graph that a big percentage of the fleet, 24% are above the EXI limit. So this means, of course, there are many things you can do. The easiest is to reduce speed. Or to invest to some items for your vessel that can improve the efficiency. From this graph, we see how different it is from the vessels where compared with the year that they have been built and the technology they have. So in the big amount of the vessels, you need to do OPL in your engine in order to reduce the speed. So these small dots represent the age of the vessel. So we see on the top how much we need to let's say, improve our efficiency of the engine. For the vessels that are from the last 5 years, from many of them maybe you don't need to do, or you will be, or it's much less. But for the vessels that built many years ago, sometimes the OPL is so big that then the speed of the engine of the ship will be too low to operate. Of course, this is case by case, and I believe you already make studies, but also Lloyds Register can study all your fleet and to consult you how you have to move for your fleet. If you want to do OPL or to do some additional investment to improve the efficiency. Similar with the previous graph for the CII, we have two projections. the more optimistic and the more pessimistic. Here is more obvious the need to adapt some measures, because we see that more than half of the fleet will not be able to maintain rating C the following years. So how we are going? We need to go to new fuels. We know that shipping does not emit a very big percentage of the global CO2, is 2.3%. But if we don't do something, this will go to 10% in the near future. So it's time that we need to make a lot of changes to our vessels and the operation. So what is the alternative fuels we have today? If we see, okay, here is for all type of vessels, so you can compare, but also for the tankers, we see that all the new vessels with alternative fuels are equipped with LNG, and a very small percentage is with methanol, very few vessels. Methanol is increasing, and there's a lot of discussions how we can follow LNG trend to have more orders and to have vessels with methanol. Here I have just an overview of the new fuels. We all know LNG that is the most attractive at the moment because the technology is here and also infrastructure is here, similar with LPG, but LPG is mostly for vessels that for LPG tankers that they carrying already LPG. Then methanol is produced by from natural gas. It can be used in dual fuel engines. The technology is also here. It's more simple than the other alternative fuels like hydrogen or ammonia. It's still a little bit expensive, but retrofit is not so complex. Biofuels is also something that we can burn even in our engines, and we already have in the market some biodiesel. But here would be big competition with other sectors, and like aerospace, we don't know how much really will remain for our sector, for shipping. From the rest of alternative fuels, hydrogen and ammonia are the two that we hear a lot. The hydrogen is still in very initial stage and is very, very expensive at the moment. For ammonia, there's a lot of investments. We'll have an engine in 2025 is expected. It's there are some thoughts. We know how to do it. We know how to make it the ammonia. It's only to make the infrastructure for the vessels to be able to burn this. But of course, there's a lot of thoughts about the toxicity that make a lot of people reject this as fuel. I think there are two different opinions here. Some of them say that this can be the future because it really can be the really green fuel, but some people are afraid the consequences of an incident because of the toxicity. Batteries, it's for very small vessels. I think we'll not see in tankers. We are working. There are some projects in some small ferries, small vessels that are going to ro-ros that have a small route. For vessels make big voyages, I think we will not see. It's very far. Only some additional source some periods just to support the main engine. The last synthetic methane is there is already some production, but is not developed so much. And the last one, that is a very big name to talk about nuclear. If someone 10 years ago talked about nuclear, we would say he's crazy, but now more and more people talk about this, because you can have really very powerful small units. The only concern is how the people see this technology, and if governments will accept. So it's a lot of, we still have a lot of road to reach this, to have acceptance for nuclear. So for the vessels we have today, we see that these start with LNGs, actually LNG carriers have LNG fueled engines, but more and more tankers are coming now. The previous, let's say, years we have container vessels, but today more and more tankers, okay, not so many because we don't have so many orders, but we see that it looks that is dominating in new orders, especially for big tankers, for VLCCs mainly, but we have also a lot of Aframaxes. The same with LPG. It's the last years, if we see the order book, we see a big increasement of the vessels that will operate with LPG, but this is mainly for gas carriers. So what is the next step? Because we talk a lot of for LNG, LPG, the big question for all, because we talk a lot about new fuels, but are we ready? Are they available? Or is it just a discussion for the future? This is a very important factor. Also, we have to compare, if we see the properties. First of all, if we see the energy density, we see that hydrogen and methanol have much less energy density. This means you need much bigger tanks, fuel tanks, or you have to do much smaller voyages. So this is an issue if we compare with the fuel we use today. And for emissions, we see that ammonia and hydrogen are to zero. For methanol, you will see to look higher than LNG, LPG, but this is when we talk about grey methanol. The aim is that in the future we produce green methanol, e-methanol, so the amount of emissions also for methanol will go quite low. That's why it's a promising fuel, but the fuels that we produce with alternative means and not by LNG or normal fuels. This is what I told you before. If we see the difference in the volume of the fuels that are required, we see that if we compare heavy fuel oil with hydrogen, it's almost 15 times more the volume you need. So you can imagine how big tanks we will need to carry our fuel. If we compare with LNG, you need double space or methanol, ammonia a little bigger. So actually, we have to consider a lot when we choose our fuel. Also, what are the voyages of the vessel, and of course how this will influence the capacity of the tanker. If for the new fuels, if we check the life cycle emissions, because we talk only about how our vessel is emitting, but we have to see the whole chain. So here is we see in the zero biofuel, e-diesel, and the fuels that are produced with alternative means, that we have also upstream CO2. So actually the net CO2 is going quite low. In some cases, in e-ammonia is going even negative, or e-hydrogen, because you consume CO2 in order to produce these fuels. So actually, finally, you have negative CO2 emission. How ready we are for these new technologies? So if we see this graph, how ready we are in different factors. I mean, from bunkering, main engine, and a fuel system. There are many fuels that actually technologies here, like bio-LNG or LNG, but for e-hydrogen, natural gases, CCS hydrogen, we see that we are in very primitive stage. Also for ammonia, in some cases, let's say for bunkering, has been improved a lot, but there is no main engine, that's why it's number 3. So what is today here ready to use? Of course, with the gas oil, the fuels we are using at the moment, LNG, bio-LNG, and for the rest of the fuels, of course, there's a lot of research at the moment, but we will need a few years more to see them more progressed. So what is the zero carbon fuels we talk? Because it's different when we talk about fuels with lower CO2 emissions, but when we talk about zero emissions. So actually, this has to do about what you create and what you are using. It's different when you use renewable energy or natural gas, CCS, and biomass. So these are the 3 aspects that we have to use in order to produce NG methanol, e-hydrogen, e-ammonia, and not to use, of course, just natural gas without carbon capture. This is not zero carbon, is what we say blue hydrogen. So we're going to there's a path to produce green fuels. So we have here 3 different aspects. We take the new fuels, and we see in 3 different aspects what is the development, from technology readiness, investment readiness, and community readiness. So for ammonia, for example, technology readiness is, I have to say, in a middle stage. We still don't have a main engine. Investment readiness still very low. And the same also for community readiness is low because there's a lot of concern about the hazards. You have 2 to 3 minutes. For methanol from the other side is different. Technology readiness is here because actually we have the engines we can use. You can change your current tanks for carrying methanol. Investment is at the moment is middle stage, not so much, but from technology and community readiness is much better. Similar for renewable methanol is a new thing. There's no the investment is extremely low at the moment. There are not investments, but actually technology is the same with LNG, so we can use it. So Lloyds Register has provide now new rules, regulations about new fuels. Is remaining ammonia and hydrogen that will be ready beginning of next year. So we can support any project that you wish to proceed with for a new fuel, either for retrofit or for a new building project. For this, we have created special gas-ready notations. Is what I told you before is different to be gas-ready and to be gas-capable. The question is how ready is your vessel, because sometimes we have ready ships that have only one reinforcement. With our notation, it's very clear what you have done. There are a lot of stages like approval, tank installed, piping installed, so you know what you really have and what is your level of readiness. Last thing, and I will complete my presentation. We talk a lot about new fuels, but just for existing vessels, investment in a new fuel is almost impossible. It's very expensive, and we don't think that we'll see a lot. Maybe some younger vessels. So a lot of you investing in emission-saving technologies. We see huge expansion the last years. Even if this is for exhaust gas economizer for propellers or for air lubrication, as we see from this sketch. The Flettner rotors, maybe not so much for tankers, mostly for bulk carriers, but new coatings, air lubrication. So this can improve the efficiency of your vessel. So it depends where are your CII ratings. We can also support you to check what could be a good solution for you. Okay. So you can subscribe in our LR news to receive all the news from Lloyds Register in this website, if you have not done already. A lot of information can come to you in your email. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much.